Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, May 1st, 2020, and welcome on into the month of May. So today I'm going to be going through a 2020 presidential election prediction between Vice President Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. Joe Biden this morning denied the rape allegations against Tara Reade, and that's pretty much the most I will be saying about the topic itself. If this continues to daunt the Joe Biden campaign in the election, I will cover it more in depth, but as of right now, to be completely honest, the mainstream media is not covering this story for whatever reason it might be, and it is only getting to real light outside of Twitter, at least, as of right now. I mean, a lot of people in the regular American public don't know about these rape allegations, mainly because the only notable companies that have picked it up are possibly Yahoo News, New York Post, not that many big sources. The New York Times investigated it and said that they found no pattern of misconduct by Joe Biden. And, you know, that's pretty much all was said about it in terms of the mainstream media, so it's not necessarily going to be an issue that's going to be pressing for the American public, considering that most of America probably doesn't even know about it. Now, even though that situation may be unfortunate for Tara Reade and, a number of people who believe that this issue should be thoroughly investigated, it'll likely only be as investigated as much as the media wants to cover it. And realistically, it's probably not going to do too much to the Joe Biden campaign, just looking at the way that news stories come and go every single day. We have a 24-hour news cycle, things cycle in and out, and realistically, the American people don't remember things, which is exactly why you can pretty much say anything at this point, and in 10 months from then or 2 months from then, people won't remember. But that brings us back to this election. So Joe Biden is right now pretty much coming down off his peak. He was at a pretty high point about a week ago, and he's still at a pretty high point. He may not be as high as he was, that's really horrible phrasing. He may not be as high in terms of the polls as he was before, but his numbers are still looking very good, which brings me to believe that Joe Biden will do well. If the election was held today, which is pretty much what all of these election predictions are from, if the election was held today, how the numbers would be, allocated. The electoral votes are very important for, obviously, all the candidates. Justin Amash did say he was running for president for the Libertarian nomination. I will talk more about that in another video. Honestly, he's not going to have too big of an impact on this race unless races do come extremely close, which right now it actually looks like they're going to be pretty substantial wins for whichever candidate wins, disregarding a couple of states that may not actually matter at the end. Justin Amash probably won't make too much of a difference. Realistically, he may not even win the Libertarian nomination in the first place. But let's just keep going through all of these states. So Donald Trump has a number of safe states. Nebraska's 2nd District is not one of them. Let's see if I'm missing any quote-unquote safe states. I will discuss why Mississippi and South Carolina are not considered safe. Same thing with the state of Texas, but we will get into that as I finish the, safe Democratic states. Pretty much, there's a number of states that always go the same way. If you're new to my election predictions, subscribe if you would like or dislike the video, depending on whether or not you agree with my prediction. Comment down below if you have any major concerns with my map, but I'll try to read all of them, and if you have any suggestions for future videos, I'll definitely read those as well. But pretty much this is how the map is going to be in terms of safe states. Now, the reason why Mississippi and South Carolina are not going to be considered safe for my electoral projection is because these two states, though being heavily Republican states, are likely to narrow down below the 15% margin. Now, my likely rating is anywhere from 5 to 15%. I understand that's a very big range. That's why I like to specify these two states will barely be likely states. But at the end of the day, they will narrow down because of increased African-American turnout. And also, these states are seeing an increase in minority voters. Whether the Republican Party can see that or not, these races are going to become increasingly more competitive. Not 2024, not maybe 2028, but probably, in a decade from now, those states will possibly be in play for Senate races and then surely eventually become in play for presidential races. The same type of trend we're seeing in the Rust Belt, where it is in play right now, but at the end of the day has been shifting more to the right and likely could end up shifting further to the right after this election or possibly back to the Democrats. But South Carolina and Mississippi, for right now, I will be characterizing as likely states. Now, I know I'm going to see a number of comments because some people don't like watching the whole video. I respect that. I mean, realistically, if you just want to see my prediction, you're probably skipping to the end, but That is the reason for those states being likely Republican. Now for Texas, Texas is a big one. A lot of Democrats have a lot of hope for Texas just because of Beto O'Rourke's stellar performance in the Senate race in 2018. Unfortunately for Joe Biden, he's not Beto O'Rourke. He doesn't have the time nor the resources. Well, he does have the resources if he focused all in one state, but allocated resources, he does not have nearly enough time to focus on every single county. I mean, Beto O'Rourke visited every county in Texas, and if you've ever seen a Texas county map, it's like they just took a ruler and drew squares. And, that takes time. That takes dedication. For a statewide race, that would be perfect. But Joe Biden isn't running in all of these states statewide. He's running a national election. Everything he says in Iowa will be used against him in Texas. Anything he says in North Carolina will be taken for and into consideration in the voting booth in Arizona. It's not like all these states don't impact one another when they vote for the same candidate. So Texas, realistically, is going to come out in full force with the Republicans. I think it's going to be a 5 to 6% margin, but that's enough to narrowly be in the likely column for Donald Trump. Now, if Texas, which it will, eventually become competitive, it'll be a huge death blow to the Republican Party. As soon as they lose Texas, they're pretty much out of the general election in terms of competitiveness. Okay, all Hillary Clinton needed to win in 2016 was Texas flipping. She could have lost. I mean, she did lose. She would have lost every other swing state except for Nevada, Colorado, and Virginia, and New Hampshire, and Minnesota, which we didn't really see coming. But if she had just won Texas, she would have won the election. It would have completely negated the fact that pretty much 6 states had flipped from blue to red. She would only need one in that scenario. And this state, Texas, is going to be competitive in future elections without a doubt. For New Hampshire, I do not know why. Every time I see new, I think New Hampshire. I think that's because I'm making a Senate video about it tonight. But New Mexico, Colorado, and Nevada. These are three states that are going to be likely for the Democratic Party. They have a strong, Democratic electorate. And, if anything from 2016 showed us, regardless of Donald Trump's performance in a number of other swing states, Hillary Clinton was able to hold on. The Democrats were able to hold on to a Senate seat, flip a Senate seat in 2018, win governor's races, win House races in these states, become, areas where the Democratic Party knows for a fact they will carry these states in 2020. Nevada, Colorado, and New Mexico will all be Democratic states in 2020. I am very confident they will be by likely margins as they were in 2016, I think, except for the state of Nevada. So that puts Joe Biden at 202 electoral votes. Let's talk about where Donald Trump can make up this margin. So when we look down in the South, even if Stacey Abrams is the VP nominee, Georgia is going to be a Republican state. Stacey Abrams pretty much hit the peak for her, campaign. Sure, there was a number of issues with the guy running for governor being Secretary of State having impact on the way that the votes were counted, but the Georgia election still ended up going to the Republicans. That's how it's going to go down. And, Georgia itself is likely going to hit a max for Democrats in a presidential election as well. I think the only way Joe Biden comes out victorious in Georgia is if it's by a plurality. And Donald Trump may not be the favorite amongst Republicans in Georgia, but if you look at the electorate itself, they're going to be way more scared about a Joe Biden presidency than they would be of a Donald Trump 4 more years. They voted for him in 2016. And it's roughly the same electorate. Even if there is increased African-American turnout, they will still hit that peak. Because if there's increased African-American turnout, you can almost bet that white turnout will be higher than it is normally. This election will have insane turnout, regardless if it's done vote by mail or not. But the thing is, Joe Biden will likely not carry Georgia. The only type of dynamic that would make it interesting is if Stacey Abrams was the VP nom, but that likely won't change the outcome of the statewide race itself. For Joe Biden, I'm going to go ahead and actually characterize the state of Minnesota as a likely Democratic state, joined by the state of New Hampshire. There's just a really bad, history for Donald Trump here. He didn't win either of these states in 2016, despite Donald Trump carrying pretty much every other state around here, making it a red sea. And Donald Trump sure came in close in the state of New Hampshire, but Joe Biden, resonates with white voters a lot better than Hillary Clinton did. He also is much more popular than Hillary Clinton was. And though both Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton both lost the state of New Hampshire in the Democratic primary, they're both likely to end up winning it in the general election. And New Hampshire and Minnesota both, horribly disapprove of President Trump in these states. Horrible in pertaining to his re-election chances in those states. Now, Donald Trump is still going to hold on to some of these other states, the state of Ohio and the state of Iowa. These are 2 states that I honestly don't see flipping. It's more realistic to see an Arizona or a Wisconsin or a Michigan flip than these 2 states, mainly because Donald Trump has such a large base here. He flipped a number of Obama voters, and yes, Joe Biden will carry a number of them back, but it's not enough to flip it over the 9-point margin in both of these states. It's going to be really hard for Joe Biden to overcome Donald Trump in states such as Ohio and Iowa. He really only needs to outperform Hillary Clinton by 1% in every single state, and he wins the election. So realistically, both of these states are going to end up going for Donald Trump, and I honestly don't think Joe Biden is going to harp too much on both of those states either. Now, North Carolina, this is a state that I think will go to the GOP. But actually, I'm going to change my previous rating. Oh, my bad. I'm going to change my previous rating from lean Republican to tilt Republican. This comes as a fact that North Carolina is likely to be what I call a sleeper state. When I say that, a lot of you guys were confused before. I mean that this state is going to be neglected by Republicans. They have a very solid they have a very solid candidate. The Democrats have a very solid candidate in the governor's race. The Senate election isn't going to be too good for the GOP either, and North Carolina is likely to be a tilt state in the general election. Joe Biden's doing very well in terms of polling data in North Carolina. He's been leading in almost every single one, and it is going to be a very close race. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump will likely be victorious in that state. As for the state of Virginia, neighboring North Carolina, it's honestly going to be a likely Democratic state. I really don't see how it could go anywhere else. Maine at large is going to be likely. Maine's 1st district is going to be safe for the Democrats. But for the state of Arizona, this one I see going to the Democratic Party. Now, before I had this as a tilt characterization, and now I will leave it as a lean Democratic state. I honestly think that Arizona will vote to the left of Wisconsin. It has been rapidly changing in favor of the Democratic Party, and we will likely see that outcome in 2020. We will probably have 2 Democratic senators based off the way that this is going from Arizona. We will see 5 representatives out of the 9 from Arizona being Democrats going to the House of Representatives, and Joe Biden will likely carry this state in the general election. Okay. If we look at the Rust Belt as well, we're likely going to see a Joe Biden victory in Pennsylvania and Michigan. But Michigan, I'm going to see I'm going to move it into the likely Democratic column. Michigan has been the state number 1 that voted for Trump by the least amount, has one of the worst approval ratings in terms of swing states for Donald Trump in 2020, and also the fact that it just Gretchen Whitmer has been working so close with Joe Biden. That is going to resonate so well with his voters. The fact that Biden was directly a part of the auto bailout is going to work so well with these Rust Belt voters. Honestly, the Rust Belt's pretty much locked up at this point. Now, that brings me to my next state. The state of Wisconsin, I'm moving in now from tilt Republican to tilt Democrat. Wisconsin, before, I was pretty confident that Donald Trump was going to narrowly take that away, but unfortunately for him, I'm not too confident about that now. This state is going to go to the Democratic Party, whether it's a larger margin on election day or not. At the end of the day, as of right now, Joe Biden is leading in the state of Wisconsin and will win it on election day. Now, this brings me to 2 congressional districts. Nebraska's 2nd, I'm going to say, goes to the GOP narrowly. Maine's 2nd district, actually, with visiting this congressional district a little bit more, I'm going to say this one's actually a lean Republican district compared to before. And this leaves me with my final state, the state of Florida. This one I still consider a tilt GOP state. Now, I understand Joe Biden has been performing better in terms of election polls, but 2018 and 2016 all point to a Republican victory in 2020. I know it's a lot more than that, with convicted felons now being able to vote, adding 1 million voters to the electorate, but at the end of the day, I honestly think Florida, it has that conservative identity that it will likely hold on to through the 2020 election. So that wraps up this video. As of today, May 1st, 2020, Joe Biden would win the presidential election with 289 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 249. Thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all tomorrow.